Welcome back to the Friday Show, presented by the Maryland Jockey Club. A big weekend of racing coming up, President's Day weekend. We'll tell you more about that in a minute. But first, Ray, as it happens, we have news this week out of Maryland to start the show. A bill was introduced in the legislature that would float $350 million in bonds. That money would go to a number of things, including renovating Pimlico and the neighborhood around it, building a new grandstand at Laurel and some other improvements, and keeping the Preakness in Baltimore for the foreseeable future. I'm looking at this deal. It looks pretty good for horse racing. Am I missing something?
I don't think so. This is a win-win-win. The bonds were floated through the Maryland Stadium Authority, which has been used to build football and baseball stadiums. The money is paid back over 30 years by the Horsemen, the City of Baltimore, and the Stronach Group. This was essentially the deal that was agreed upon last October, and it guarantees that the Preakness will remain in Baltimore and solidifies Laurel as a year-round racing and training center. It closes Bowie as a training center. And the Stronach Group is giving up land at Bowie to the city and to the university nearby. And they're giving up the land at Pimlico, and they're leasing it back from the city for 2 months each spring so they can run the meeting that culminates with the Preakness.
Yeah, when I read this, with all the doom and gloom that's been in the industry the last few months, I was thinking, well, this is pretty refreshing. We've had, we'll get to Pennsylvania in a minute, been other places where politicians are starting to come down hard on horse racing, talking about pulling the rug out from underneath the industry in their state. Here is a case where the politicians in Maryland are dedicating to horse racing over a 30-year period. So, that has to give a boost to an industry that is struggling right now.
Well, I think it shows a couple of things. First, it shows that Maryland has a rich history of horses and horse racing, and that's something that's recognized by the legislature. And secondly, the Preakness is the largest sporting event each year in the state of Maryland. So both the Preakness and the horse industry are big deals, and it's really refreshing and gratifying.
Do we know when all this would be completed?
Well, it's a they say it's a 3 to 4 year plan, and according to the reports, the Preakness will remain at Pimlico while the work is ongoing. And part of this plan is to redevelop all of the property at Pimlico. They're rebuilding a grandstand, and they're actually moving the racetrack, I think, 30 degrees. And the infield will be recreational soccer fields, baseball fields, whatever. And parts of the land will be developed by the city.
Well, that all sounds good. Now let's switch to another state in the region, Pennsylvania, where the news isn't so good. Governor Tom Wolf this week proposed cutting more than 80% from the Pennsylvania Racehorse Development Fund. That fund is derived from slots revenue. He wants to move that money into college scholarships. On the face of it, I can't imagine if there was a vote in the public whether they would vote for college scholarships or horse racing. I don't think that would fare very well for our industry. But what do you make of this?
Well, I think that Pennsylvania is a great example of how states that get slots revenue have to take that money and invest it in improving their product, making themselves more self-sustainable, because the Thoroughbred Idea Foundation posted a blog looking at this situation, and I think something like 80% of the purses are coming out of slots instead of out of pari-mutuel wagering, and they've got to work on increasing the amount of money being wagered so the state can this money is going to go away at some point. It's really just a matter of how fast and how much, because Governor Wolf, he's the highest ranking official in Pennsylvania to say, we want that money. There have been other state legislators in recent years that say, why are we giving this money to horse owners when we could be giving it to widows and orphans and hospitals and education? So it's really an inevitability that this is going to happen. It's just a matter of how soon.
And this is a problem throughout this industry in many states. I mean, the Thoroughbred Idea Foundation, you mentioned the thing that they published. They also point out that between Churchill Downs Incorporated and Penn National Gaming, there are 18 facilities in various states that operate horse racing from those companies. So that's a lot of power in the hands of a couple of casino companies, basically. So, I think the biggest takeaway for me is that the bones of the industry are in trouble in these certain areas. The TIF also pointed out that, what racing needs to do to sustain long term is focus on the business itself. What you pointed out about the 80% of the purses, the money coming from slots, if that money's taken away, everything's going to collapse. And in that time period, this is like about a decade, handle has declined precipitously. So that is the problem. Handle is what you need to generate long-term success in this business and not have to rely on slots. And generating handle means, attracting new customers and doing other things to boost the bones of the business.
Yeah, Pennsylvania has got multiple problems. Takeout is far too high. The regulatory structure is absurd because it's got the horsemen really in control of the racing commission, which by the face of it is just the fox literally guarding the hen house. And it's just they're not marketing. There's no marketing done at the state's biggest tracks at Parks Racing. They market the casino. They really do a good job there, but they do not market racing. They're not really trying, it seems to me, to increase what used to be the core product, which is now a secondary product, which is horse racing.
Yeah, I think the focus needs to be on making racing in these places where the casinos are propping it up a competitive wagering product. Again, back to handle. You need handle to sustain the sport long term. And it's not a competitive wagering product in some of these areas. The lottery is about the only thing that's worse in terms of takeout. So, that's a big problem. And the sport just has ignored these issues over the years because of the subsidies coming from slots. And here we see an example where what they give, they can take away. We saw it in Ontario. And in that situation, they came to a deal, and Woodbine has stepped up and, is generating a whole new future for itself by this plan to create a whole campus on their property. And I think that is the way to go for racing. Sustain on your own, control your own destiny, and not leave it up to politicians. But we do have a poll about this. What's the level of danger here that the industry will lose this money? Do you think it will happen? Let us know. Share your thoughts at PaulickReport.com. Well, Ray, coming up, President's Day weekend, a big weekend at Laurel Park. The Maryland Jockey Club will have thoroughbred racing and prizes and giveaways and great racing throughout the weekend.
Yeah, over the years, they've really created this date in February as a really neat event. Big stakes races throughout the card, and it's an event. It can be a lot of fun to go out to Laurel Park for this festival and enjoy a day of racing.
Plus, there's $800,000 in purse money on the line. You've got the General George Stakes and the Barbara Fritchie Stakes, and it's racing throughout the weekend, including President's Day on Monday. So make sure you get involved with that coming up. All right, that's going to do it for this edition of the Friday Show. Thanks so much for joining us, and we'll talk to you next time.